Hey, what's up everyone? How's everyone feeling today? This is Bar Perry back at you with another video. And today's topic, I want to talk a little bit about double closing. What is double closing and how can you get involved into double closing and why it's important on some deals to have double closing. That's today's topic. Let's dive right in. So what is a double close? Double close is basically you have the contract with the seller, you have a purchase and sell agreement with the seller, and then you also have a purchase and sell agreement with your end buyer, the person you're going to be selling it to. Now, typically, a lot of times individuals talk about use assignment fees. Now, assignment fees are the most easier and effortless way because you're just assigning the contract over. But sometimes you might come across properties to where you might need to do a double closing. And the reason why you want to do that is because sometimes the end buyers, and I had this mistake numerous of times before, sometimes the end buyer might not be happy of what you're making. They might not be feeling that, or the seller might be upset that you're making 20 grand off their property. When you talk them down to this number, they can be upset that you're making $20,000. So you have to keep that in mind. It has to be, I didn't wholesale the deals to where I signed the contract over and I made $25,000, $30,000. But typically, most of the time, you're going to be getting like 10 to 12,000, which is fine. But sometimes, if you have a seller and you got a contract with them, and they see what you're making on assignment fee, because keep in mind when you do an assignment of contract, and when all those paperwork, when the paperwork goes to the closing to the title company, the seller is going to see what you're making because it's an assignment. You're signing it over. So the seller and the end buyer is going to see what you're making. So you have to keep that in mind. So you have to ask yourself, okay, well, if I come across a property to where I could be making $20,000, $30,000 off this one deal, is it important for me to assign it over to my end buyer, or is it important for me to do a double closing? Now, that just depends, because if you have a great relationship with your end buyer, then I would say go for the assignment if they're okay with you making $30,000. But if you don't have a good relationship with them, or you haven't did numerous of deals with them and they understand that you're going to be making this type of money, then it will be better to do a double closing. Now, the reason why you want to do a double closing is because you don't want to see each party know what you're making. Because if you do a double closing, say you have a purchase and sell agreement with the seller, you have a purchase and sell agreement with the end buyer. Both of these contracts go to the title company. They both go to the title company, and then the title company will open two escrows. So basically, when they open two escrows, there's going to be closing costs on this side, and there's also going to be closing costs on this side. Now, if you're making a large amount of money, you're probably going to be paying the seller's closing costs. That's what you're going to be paying. And then the end buyer will be paying your closing costs. So the A to B, you'll be paying the A to B closing costs, and then the end buyer will be paying the B to C closing costs. But what's going to happen is the end buyer's money is going to gravitate and close the first A to B transaction, and then you will have to come out of your spread. So let's say if you're making 20 grand, probably for closing costs on the first transaction, you might be paying like $3,000, $2,500 to $3,000, depends on the deal. You're making $2,500 to $3,000 on closing costs, so you're only going to walk away with around roughly $17,000. So you have to keep that in mind. So on an assignment fee, whenever you assign it over, you're not paying any closing costs. But when you do a double closing, you will be paying closing costs on the first transaction. Now, both of the closings are going to happen at the same time on the same date, but someone has to pay for this closing and someone has to pay for this closing because there's two escrows. Does that make sense? So you have to pay for the first transaction of closing, which meaning that if you're making $20,000 and the closing cost is $3,000 on transaction A, then you'll just be walking away with $17,000 instead of $20,000. Now, if you assign it the contract over, you'll be making straight $20,000 because you're not paying any double closing, you're doing an assignment fee, so you won't be paying the double closing. So, through a nutshell, it's just basically transaction A, transaction B, that's with you and the seller, y'all have it under contract, and then B and C, you have with the end buyer, and it's just two contracts that go to the escrow takes care of it, and then you have a double closing. Now, why it's important to do double closings, like I mentioned, is because the end buyer could be upset that you're making 20 grand, or the seller could be upset that you're making 20 grand. So it just depends on, you know, the relationship you got with the seller, and it also depends on the relationship you have with the buyer. Now, if the seller is motivated, then maybe you can get away with assignment fee. It just depends on how motivated they are. You can just kind of tell that over the phone. If they seem like they're kind of hard to work with, but they're motivated, but they still seem like they're kind of hard to work with, I would say go for a double closing. I would say just do that double closing. Then that way they would not see what you're making. And also as well, if the end buyer has kind of always been kind of drawing you down on pricing before, like, you know, they always want to negotiate, they always want to draw down on the prices to get you lower and lower, I would say double close will work better, because the end buyer is definitely, when they see you make 20,000, you didn't do nothing, they're definitely going to want to negotiate you down on that price. So I would say go for a double closing. Then that way won't nobody see what you're making on the transaction. Now, there can be different things and different scenarios with how you structure it, but double closing is that's how it is in a nutshell. So just always remember that it just depends. I mean, typically I be hearing some investors, they'll say if you're making $15,000 or more, they go double closing. If they're making $15,000 or less, they're going assignment. So it just depends on your market, but you just got to see what's comfortable for you. I mean, typically with me personally, if I'm making anything over 20 grand, I'm probably going to do a double closing. If it's $25,000 or $30,000 I can make off one deal, I'm going to do a double closing. I'm not falling for what happened before. It's funny because the apartment building that we had last year that I did an assignment fee on, and I put the amount that I'm going to be making on that assignment fee, and it was $75,000. The guy definitely talked me all the way down, and I ended up only making like 20 grand off that deal. So I know better because I didn't do a double closing, which I should have did a double closing, and I would have made my $75,000. But I didn't do that, and that's a lesson to be learned. And keep in mind, there's things that are gonna pop up, but you learn as you go through the experience. You learn as you go. You learn as you grow. So that's in a nutshell. That's double closing. Basically, it's just two contracts the A to B contract you have with the seller, and the B to C contract that you have with the end buyer. And then both of those contracts go to the escrow title company. They open up two escrows, meaning if you have two escrows open, that means there's going to be two closings, and there's going to be two closing costs. So keep in mind that the end buyer is only going to pay for one closing cost. So he'll pay for yours and his, but you will have to pay for yours and the seller's. Meaning that when the end buyer brings his funds amount to the escrow can take those funds and pay transaction A, but also pay some money on your fee and the closing costs. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to come out the pocket and you have to pay $3,000 for closing costs. It doesn't mean that. It just means that out of your profit share, you'll be minusing $3,000 for the transaction A to get that closed, and then transaction B will be closed, and then it will all be closed together. So, and keep in mind as well, I didn't mention this, that make sure that you have a title company that understands double closing, because if a title company doesn't understand it, you don't really have the time to really sit there and talk to them about double closing. They have to understand double closing. They should have did double closings before with other investors. If they haven't did it, I will move on to a next title company that's familiar with double closings, because once you start to tell them how it works, they're gonna think it's too complex. They're gonna think it's illegal to do. And that's one of the experiences that I had as well. I try to call different title companies. Some title companies don't know about this. So not every title company is going to know about double closing. So you want to make sure that you get an investor-friendly title company, people that work with investors, that they can double close on your property. So that's all I got for today. Just wanted to share this quick insight about double closing. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification button. And if you can relate to these channels, and if you can relate to this real estate investing, if this is something you want to get involved in, keep watching my videos. I'm going to be putting more content out there. Been doing a little bit of work as well through a couple deals, a couple projects we're working on right now. So everything is always working out, but just continue to progress, continue to have faith, believe in yourself, and things will work out for you. So that's all I got for today. I hope you guys be well, and see you on the other side. Thank you.